How's it going, everyone? My name is Jovani and welcome back to another video. If you guys saw in the last video, we have this beautiful 1979 Chevrolet Camaro, and you'll know that we tried to fix the transmission on it. It didn't work out. So just to catch you guys up, so this is my Stranger Things 1979 Camaro. This is not the same car, but you know, the same car that Billy drove in Stranger Things, and it even was originally blue like his was. This is a 350 car, which means it has a Chevy 350 small block engine in it, backed by a turbo hydromatic 350. In the last video we tried to repair it. I don't know how to rebuild transmissions. I tried my best. I gave it my best effort. The car drives, it runs and everything, but it just feels like it's basically stuck in second gear. Like it just isn't very fast, I guess. I was getting ready to go ahead and yank it out again. Try my best to try to figure out what's going on and troubleshoot it and whatnot, take it all back apart again. And then I just hopped on good old Facebook Marketplace and started looking around, and just very luckily I came across this. This is a 700R4 transmission. A 700R4 is the precursor to the 4L60E transmission that maybe you guys know of, since we do LS stuff on this channel. Basically, the 700R4 is physically identical to a 4L60E. It's just that it's manually operated, whereas the 4L60E is E for electronically operated. The 700R4, just like the 4L60, is a 4-speed overdrive transmission, so that means fourth gear is overdrive. This one is out of a 1989 Camaro, so it does have an electronic speedometer, which I honestly would have preferred the manual one, but you know, you win some and you lose some. I'll switch that out eventually. We'll figure that all out at another date. Right now, most important thing is to get this in there and get the car running again, because I am all out of vehicles. So our next job, unfortunately, is to remove this TH350, which we just inserted in there a few days ago. Like I said, you win some and you lose some. This time I lost, but all that matters is that I did give it a good effort and I tried my best. And sometimes you don't succeed, and that's okay. We're willing to admit defeat sometimes. All we gotta do is pray that that transmission works. I got it for $150, which is insane, but no one's really looking for 700R4s these days. Kind of just not wanted anymore. If I had more time, different circumstances, I would love to throw a bunch of parts onto that, make it stronger, all that stuff. Throw a shift kit on there, whatever. But as of right now, I don't have the time. I'd like to just get it running. The swap itself is pretty straightforward. I mean, the transmission bolts right up to the engine itself. One of the caveats is that the TH350 is, I think, exactly 3 inches shorter than the 700R4. So we're gonna have to get a shorter drive shaft or shorten ours by 3 inches. There are a few drop-in drive shafts, which I'll leave in the link below. I think there's one out of a Chevy Blazer, like 2-wheel drive, 2-door Blazer, is about the right size. There's also one out of a Mustang that, as long as you change the yoke for, will fit. And Summit does sell that one, but it is about $400. I think what I'm going to do, which I've never done before, but willing to try, is to shorten my drive shaft by myself. It will be taking out 3 inches out of this drive shaft and welding it back up. So that'll be interesting. That's not something I've done before, and I guess it's something we're gonna be trying today. But anywho, enough talk. Let's go ahead and start pulling out this transmission so we can get this other one in there. All right, so I should be a lot quicker at this the second time around. Just a lot of lessons learned and stuff like that. The main things we're gonna wanna do is obviously unbolt the transmission from the engine. I think there is 5 or 6 bolts that connect the actual bow housing to the engine. We're gonna have to disassemble our linkage here. That's all pretty straightforward. It's just these 2 bolts down here and then disconnect it from there. You're also going to want to disconnect your kickdown cable, because the first time I did this, I did not disconnect it from the carb, and then the transmission like basically was hanging from that, and just not good overall. Transmission fluid got everywhere. We'll disconnect the fill hole tube, or the fill tube, disconnect our speedo. Lastly, we'll unbolt the cross member here, and then we're gonna have to make a few modifications to the actual cross member itself. And now, in addition to the 700R4 being longer, the mounting position is actually a little bit further back. I think it's 2 inches further back. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna basically grab our cross member, and see how it's got these 2 holes right here? Well, there's a bolt in each one of those holes. We're basically gonna move the front bolt to the back bolt, and then kind of figure out our placement here. Have to drill a hole through the frame, and then probably hole saw this right here, so that way we can access that bolt. Luckily enough, we have enough meat on our cross member and stuff to go 2 inches back, and that's just about the perfect amount needed to make everything fit properly. No other modifications required as far as that goes. And then of course you have to unbolt the 3 torque converter bolts from the torque converter itself. So that's pretty much the gist of it. All that stuff, it makes a big mess. So what I think I'm gonna do this time, which I didn't do last time, I'm gonna go ahead and unbolt a couple bolts on the pan to try to catch some more fluid. All right, so taking out the speedo cable is simply just unscrewing this part. All right, that's done. Then we can disassemble our linkage here, and that will drop the rest of it down. All right, so we've got our linkage disconnected here. We've got our speedometer cable removed. The linkage, just simply remove this one little bolt right here and then pull everything to the side. I just kept the bolt on there with the washer just so I don't lose it. Next up, I'm just gonna go to the front and with the 3 torque converter bolts. This one's pretty easy to get to. You just have to keep turning the torque converter until you can see them right here, and then just unscrew them. So there's 3 of them, just keep spinning it till you find them. All right, so our torque converter is as free as a bird now. Now we're just gonna start taking care of the bell housing bolts. There's 2 right here close to you, 2 on the other side, and I think there's 3 on the top, 1 dead center and then 1 on each side of that. The ones on the passenger side have the oil dipstick tube and a couple of like harness things on there. Overall, they're not too hard to get a hold of. The ones on the very top of the transmission, you can actually access through the engine bay itself. So that's probably what I'll end up doing for those. Okay, so it's starting to get a little bit dark, but I'm pretty sure I got the bell housing bolts out. The last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and remove these frame cross member bolts. I think it's an 11/16 up top and a 5/8 down here on the bottom. And so we're gonna remove those. It's a nut and a bolt, and then that will allow us to actually slide the cross member out once we unbolt the last 2 bolts on the actual mount itself. Once that's all done, basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a bucket behind the tail housing, because as soon as this transmission comes down a little bit, unless you've drained everything out, there's still going to be some fluid that comes out. So be sure to catch that or you'll get a mouthful of transmission fluid. Other than that, that's pretty much it. I still have the trans lines connected, but I can disconnect those once the transmission is down a little bit further. They've got some slack in them, so that should be about it. All right, I know it's pretty dark, but as you can see, the transmission's pretty much fully down. I just stuffed the dipstick hole with some paper towels just to absorb any of that, and then everything else is pretty much disconnected. So tomorrow, we will take this thing all the way out and probably throw in the 700 R4. Let's just do it. Let's just do it dry like that. All right, day 2, and Mr. Brown Shorts came by and dropped me off some parts here. This is what is this? This is gonna be our TCC lockup solenoid, I'm pretty sure. We're gonna have to take the pan off of the transmission and install this. This is gonna allow us to lock up our solenoid. Pretty sure it has like a vacuum sensor that's going to automatically lock up the solenoid for us. And if not, I think there's a manual override switch as well, which is pretty neat. TCI 36600 lockup kit. In addition to that, by the way, these parts are all from Summit Racing because they get my parts here in like 1 day flat. This one is a Shiftworks SC2262. This is pretty neat. This actually lets us use our factory shifter with the 4-speed transmission. You can see it even comes with a little sticker for the shift indicators, so that's pretty neat. But yeah, this is basically going to allow us to use our stock shifter and still put it into all the way down to manual low. Pretty neat stuff here. That's basically all I needed to purchase for now. Everything else is going to be kind of just fabrication and whatever. So let's go ahead and slap these things in there. Okay, so we've got our 700 R4 here. We've tipped it on its side. I'm using this kind of as my transmission table. It's got this nice little caved in feature where everything just kind of drips into that pan there. So what we have to do, a few things. First, I need to take this mount off so I can get the pan off all the way. As stated earlier, this is our TCI universal lockup kit. The main thing that we have to do is drop the pan and then replace whatever harness is in there with this harness. And then, you know, there'll be a few more things we got to do. But they do include a gasket. I wish they wouldn't have folded it up like that, but it's in there. Got to give them credit for that. Yeah, so let's get this pan off. Let's get this thing in here and then go from there. All right, so the first thing we have to do here is take off the pan, obviously. Okay, not looking bad at all actually. Bottom of the pan looks super clean, not a lot to worry about here, not even a lot of clutch material. So I do believe that this transmission maybe did have 50,000 miles on it, so that's pretty cool. All right, now that we have the pan off, I'll bust out the instructions, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna be removing this thing, this harness, everything that goes here, all of these, and then replacing them with the ones in the kit. That one, this one should pop off like this. There we go. Okay, so this little solenoid here has a couple bolts. I'm just going to take the bolts out, unplug it, and then put the bolts just back there so I know that they go there. Pretty sure this is our TCC lockup solenoid. I actually think that thing gets replaced. Okay, gamers, so I was a little bit confused, so I just wanted to read through the instructions entirely before I carried on. Mostly I was confused because I thought this would be just a connector, like the solenoid would have its own little connector. Well, it does not. So what we're doing is we're replacing just the harness here. We're going to be reconnecting one of these sensors, and then basically cutting the solenoid wiring and splicing it into the new TCI harness. That's basically the gist of it. Nothing too crazy. We're just gonna, you know, cut it probably right here, put in the new harness, connect one of these one of these sensors, and then we're good to go. So the next step is going to be to take off this connector here. I honestly don't know how this thing comes out, so I'm gonna have to mess with it a little bit. Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. That's our connector there. Now I'm just gonna re-emphasize a couple things it says in the instructions. Our connector, we're just gonna have to pay attention very closely to the lettering on it. So if you'll notice here, I don't know how well you guys will be able to see this, honestly. Here, I might be able to get a close-up here. I don't know how well you'll notice, but there are letters on these connectors. A, B, C, and D. The big thing that we have to do is we have to just make sure that we know which one is A, which one is B, and which one is C. Or it looks like D on this end. The reason why is because obviously these ones are not colored. We need to be able to know which ones get put back onto the solenoid themselves after we cut it. So we're just gonna reconnect this plug very carefully. Try not to bend any pins or anything like that. It's a little tricky because there's not a lot of space. That looks correct to me. So just remember, we'll actually probably just even, well, A, B, D. So now here's where we start looking at the actual instructions again, and we have to figure out which one goes where. Remove the old harness entirely. So, and this is the diagram that I'm going to be going off of. It's going to be the street strip diagram because we are running a fully automatic trans. There is another sheet here for fully manual valve body, which we're not going to worry about. So basically, as it shows here, A, B, D. All we have to do is connect terminal A to the positive side of the TCC solenoid, which is the red one, terminal B to the negative, and then terminal D to the fourth clutch switch, which looks like it's going to be this one right here. So just before I do any of this, I'm going to just read through this really quickly one more time, make sure we're all good, and then carry on. Okay, so I was just going over the instructions again. It looks like the kit comes with a new switch that we're going to replace this old one with. Really, all we have to do for this is remove it. Find a way to remove it, really, is more like it, because it's a little in there. Looks like maybe a pair of vice grips. Okay, there we go. Vice grips is the way to go. And then maybe a pair of pliers to just twist it off once it's loose. Let's see. Yeah. So there's our switch. We got it disconnected. And now we put on our dual contact switch. So I'm just gonna get it started. I'm sure that there's a wrench size that this thing uses, but I doubt you'd be able to get something useful in there. Okay, that should be good. So now we got our dual contact switch on there. D goes to one of the contacts. Put that one on the bottom down there. And then this one as well. Go in here, go through there. Same kind of maneuver here. This one has a lot of slack on it, but it should still be fine. And then what I'll probably do, since there's a lot of slack on this, probably zip tie these wires or something out of the way, maybe like up under here. A is going to go to the positive side, B is going to go to the negative side of our terminal. And that should be about it. Our solenoid here. Alright, and there's two. So now I've just grabbed some little zip ties and we're just going to make everything kind of bundle up so it's not in the way and it doesn't get pinched by the pan or anything like that. Okay, so that should be everything that needed to be done inside the transmission. Now we can go ahead and we can worry about the external wiring stuff outside of the transmission now, inside the car, whatever we want to do there. But that should be pretty much it for now. All right, so one thing that I completely spaced out on this transmission is the cooler lines. I do have cooler lines on the TH350, but they use like an older style, probably like a 3/8 MPT fitting. I remembered I had these are ICT billet. I'm pretty sure these are for a 4L60E, and they look like they are going to work. It feels like the same thread. So I'm pretty sure these will be okay, but that means I'll have to either adapt my trans cooler lines to go to the stock radiator, or I may have to just do something else. Maybe just get a aftermarket trans cooler in general. So it does feel like these ones definitely fit. So I'm just gonna confirm whether or not I can use 4L60E fittings on a 700 R4, and then we'll just get ready to put this thing in the car already. Okay y'all, so we got the transmission slid about where it needs to be. Now the problem is the car is not high enough off the ground to where I can get the jack underneath the transmission and slide everything all in one piece. So basically I have to get the transmission under here, then somehow lift the transmission up onto the jack. Now this thing probably weighs 200 pounds, and so I'm not really able to bench press it by myself onto the jack and then use the jack to get it up there. So what I did last time, and what seemed to work all right, is I'm gonna just get a ratchet strap like this, and I'm just going to throw it around to that side. And what that's gonna allow me to do, hopefully, is hoist the rear of the transmission up high enough to where I can maybe get the jack close, and then possibly I can probably get a actual jack on that side and start lifting up. If I can get at least the till. All right, so at this point basically the hard part's done. I've got quite a few bolts in there. I'll throw the last bolt on the top there in. 5 out of 6 bolts are in there. Now is kind of where we are doing a lot of test fitting, right? I don't think we're gonna have to pull down the transmission at all anymore. At this point, this is where we're gonna get like our cross member and see where everything mounts, and just kind of take a good look at everything and see where everything goes. I think we could reuse this mount on the transmission itself and just use this single bolt here into our original cross member. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift up the transmission as much as I can and then put the cross member underneath it, and that way we can kind of like slide the cross member back and forth and see where it fits. Okay. Okay. What I want to do is I think I want to get one of the bolts in here. Honestly, I'm probably not even going to drill new holes in the frame. I'm probably just going to bolt it onto here. One bolt on each side is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my bolt and slide it through the top here and see if we're able to get both sides matching up, and then we're pretty much done with the transmission portion, and then we can start moving on to the drive shaft, I think. Here's what we got going on, right? I took my yoke off, inserted it in here, pulled it out 1 inch. This halfway mark between the U-joint to the halfway mark of that U-joint, I measured 47. So we take that same measurement, I measured halfway here, and that is 47. Sorry, under the car is 45, this one's 47. So that means we need to take off 2 inches. I think you're safe taking off anywhere from 2 to 3 inches just because there's enough play in the yoke. I'm just gonna take off 2 inches to be safe. I can always cut more if I need to. All loosely, before I finish welding everything, I'll put the cap back on and then test fit, see if it works. If not, I can take off more. So now what we need to do, we're going to grind this weld off and then very carefully grind just enough in there to where the yoke cap will pop off. There should be about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of cap that goes inside the tube, and that's what we're going to try to pop off. We can hit it with the hammer this way to try to pop it off. You'll see that line crack, and then we'll cut our tube from this point 2 inches. So let's go do that. Okay, so what we've done here is we've made a reference mark just on each side of the drive shaft where we're gonna cut. This is just my reference mark for my phasing, basically. This cap, when I'm done, it needs to be perfectly parallel and true with that other cap down there. So in order to help me do that, I've just made this reference mark. We're gonna be grinding this weld down, but as long as this line matches up to this line, and then this line matches up to that line, we'll be in the ballpark and we can true it up once we're done. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my flap wheel and I'm gonna slowly grind this weld flat until it's even with the pipe or the tube. And then what we'll do is we'll take our small 3-inch grinder and slowly start chipping away at that until we see that weld line, and then we will tap this with a hammer to see if it'll crack off. As you can see, we've ground down my weld pretty much all the way to it's flush with the pipe. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my 3-inch grinder and just slowly start working my way around in a circle, just a little bit at a time. We're not trying to go too deep because basically the thickness of the pipe is what we're trying to cut. Anything else is gonna be part of our yoke. All right, so this is what I'm doing. As you guys can see, I'm just inching away at this. I'm getting, you know, just basically running the angle grinder once in a line. And what we're trying to get is, you know, see where it's cracking right there? We're starting to crack. That's what we're looking for. So we're just gonna keep running our angle grinder until we get to that layer of metal. And then once we're all the way around, we should be able to hit this thing and it should just crack. We'll get like a nice little weld crack line, and then from there we should be able to pop this cap off. Okay, you guys should be able to see more of that crack forming. We're getting very, very, very close. I'm just gonna keep tapping it with the hammer here and let's see what happens. I'll do it while I'm recording. I'm just using this old U-joint and hitting against it. There we go, look. There we go. That's what we were looking for. We didn't get too far into the cap there, so that's pretty good. We'll have plenty of room to weld. Now you can see our drive shaft is just a hollow tube. So we'll take 2 inches out of this and pop this puppy back in there. You know, it's a nice press fit into there. And then we're good to go. We'll weld this bead and send her, brother. One more thing, since I had the cap here and I know where it broke off from, I just put an X on this side and no X on this side. I don't remember if that matters or not, but it might because of the phasing, the balancing. You know, we want this side to be on the same side that we cut it off from. So just so we're clear. All right, so this is my 2 inches. And so what I'm done basically is, we don't want the flange of the drive shaft to be crooked at all or anything like that. You could use a hose clamp. What I opted for was this cylinder ring compressor. This should give us a nice straight edge, I'm hoping. I'm gonna go ahead and mark it with marker, and then I'm gonna actually use the cylinder hone as a guide for my angle grinder. And we're just gonna go slow. We're just gonna take our time and take off this 2 inches of the drive shaft. And even. Alright, and I'll just show you guys the results here. It's not perfectly flat, but honestly it's probably not terrible. So it's really not that bad actually. I think we're fine. I think I'll sand it there. Obviously we can compensate a little bit with our welding, but we wanted this as flat as possible as we could. I already pre-cleaned the cap, that way we can weld to it. But at this point now, it's all about getting the cap back in there at the right phasing, line up our lines and everything. I'll throw a tack on here, go put it up in the car, make sure everything works, and then go from there as well. Okay, so we're just test fitting right now. Haven't welded anything, haven't done anything, but I just wanted to show you guys. So this is with the, I'd say it's about anywhere between 3/4 and 7/8 of an inch out. The yoke, it slipped out a little bit. You can see, watch. See, I can shove it in there and I can pull it out as much as I need to. That's way too much, but about there-ish is what we're aiming for, I think. Maybe a little more, somewhere in there, but you guys could just see how nice everything ended up lining up. This still has room to come back a little bit as well. Like we have plenty of space. It's important that you pull that out just a little bit, just so you have enough play for everything. When you're taking your drive shaft out, right, you need to pull everything forward like this to get it out from your rear end like that. So, all right, now it's gonna fall on my face. All right, but I just wanted to show you guys that. And like I said, if you guys aren't, I mean, you guys don't have to do this, obviously. You could either get a drive shaft made in the right size. Mine ended up being 45 inches, and that's measured from yoke to yoke. So if you guys want to, go to a drive shaft shop, have them make you a custom drive shaft 45 inches. Our U-joints are all the original ones because we're using our existing yoke, and we're using the same U-joint for the rear end. So all that's the same. I'm gonna buy new U-joints for mine, but they're just gonna be stock 79. I can go to AutoZone and just, or any parts store, and just get 79 Camaro U-joints, which is pretty nice. There is a, like I said, I think a Fbody Mustang with a 5.0 has a 45.5 inch drive shaft, which is only about ½ inch too big. You should be fine with that. Summit Racing sells them. I'll put them in the link right here. They're about $400. Super nice aluminum shafts. You will need a couple of adapter U-joints though to make everything work. Or I've heard that a two-door, two-wheel drive Chevy Blazer, I don't know, 80s, 90s, 2000s, I don't know which one, but one of those cars has a 45 inch drive shaft as well. That one, I'm not sure what you need to make work at all, but it probably will work. I'm sure the yoke will work because it's probably a 4L60. The rear end might need a little bit of a adapter or whatever U-joint, but those are your options. I chose to cut mine because it's free, and you know, I have the means to do so. But one last thing I'm going to show you guys is with our phasing. When I talk about the phasing, that's why we made these marks. Basically what you want is you want this U-joint to lay flat on the floor and this one lay flat on the floor. Basically what I'm getting at, and there's obviously going to be a little bit of wiggle because, you know, not everything's machined surface flat, but I can stand on this thing and there's a slight wiggle, but that's just imperfections. That might actually be our U-joint cap, but you guys are getting what I'm saying, right? We want everything to be all in line. That way the phasing of the U-joints is all correct. All right, and then so the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and grind out a little bevel here so that way we can get some nice penetration with our welder. Weld this thing all up and send it. All right, and here's our finished product. I mean, not anything I would brag home about, but it's a solid weld nonetheless. I mean, to be fair, that's a factory one, so whatever, you know, it's a weld. A weld is a weld. It's a weld only a mother could love. Just gonna let it cool down, and then we're gonna replace the U-joints and get everything back assembled. Remember, this is our yoke side with our weights, and this is our rear end side. All right, drive shaft done. Got it all in there, all good to go. So the next thing is going to be our shift linkage, and that we have another kit for, so we'll go ahead and unbox that and start seeing what's involved there. Okay, so we actually have to remove the shifter from inside the car, and I am filthy, so I'm actually going to wait till I change my clothes, and I'll probably do that. But looks pretty straightforward. I mean, the instructions are very, very vague. What I'm getting is, I think we're gonna change like the gear selector pawl thing. Remove the shifter. Drill out the rivets on the factory D10 in stock shifter and replace it with ShiftWorks detent and supplied hardware. Okay. Reinstall shifter. Install cable bracket and lever on transmission. With the transmission and shifter both in overdrive position, the distance from the cable, okay. Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward. I think we'll be able to figure this one out. Yeah, we'll do this when I'm clean again. Alright, I know it's getting dark, but the ShiftWorks kit for the linkage, all we're really going to do is replace all the stock parts with their bracketry. That's basically as self-explanatory as it gets. We're going to replace the one that mounts to the transmission panel with their piece, replace the actual shift selector with theirs, and that's really it, honestly. Alright everyone, so we are inside the Camaro now. The next step involves taking off the shifter. Mine already came pre-unbolted, which is neat. So you'll have to take this panel off. Also have to take the shifter off. You'll pull this guy off, and then in here there is a snap ring that we'll need to undo, and then this top piece will just pop off. And then we're going to be basically taking out the entire shift mechanism from here, and then drilling out 2 holes and installing this in their place. So pretty straightforward. It's just a little bit of work to do to get it done. So turns out that you actually have to take the center console off. No biggie for me. Mine was very loosely put on there. I think we're going to take apart kind of everything associated with this right now. So it looks like there's a few bolts. So there's a 1/2 inch bolt there, 1/2 inch bolt back here, another one back here, probably one more right here. Yeah. So we're going to take those 4 off, but obviously everything's still going to be connected to our linkage. So it looks like the easiest way to do that would be to pull this cotter pin right here and then pull out these like locking tabs. That should let our cable just slide out. Okay, yeah, that was definitely right. So basically this guy just slides out of the hole here. So once you remove that locking tab, it just slides out. So now we got our shifter out. Let's go take it to the bench and drill out these rivets and put in our new detent piece. Okay, so now we could see kind of what's going on here a little bit better now that it's out. This piece right here, you could see there's 2 rivet holes. There's one right here and one right here. We're going to drill out those holes and then replace that piece with this piece, replace the rivets with bolts. Basically just drill these rivets out. That's all we're going to do. I'm going to start off with a really small bit, just get it dead center, and then drill it out with the bigger bit. Okay, so we got both those rivets drilled out. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to get that bracket off by just prying against it with the flathead screwdriver. I just found out something interesting that I did not notice until I started this. Someone tried to, I don't know how this thing would have broken off in the first place. I don't know if that's like a common Camaro issue, but someone tried to weld this back together at some point in its life. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I noticed my shifter stopped working after I was like banging on things, and I was like, shit, I messed it up. But I think just it finally cracked open and now it's like wedged. So just stuff you don't see all the time. Anyway, just working on these rivets. They're a little tight in there. Just gonna keep going at it. I might have to drill them completely out. This took a little bit longer than I anticipated at first, but everything seemed to have worked out just fine. For mine, you guys probably won't have to for yours, but for mine, I ended up putting my gate inboard of this panel. Typically, it would have sat in front of it like this, but I have so much slop in my shifter. You guys can see how much slop I have, and everything's wanting to go this way, that my pawl for the actual gate wasn't actually catching on anything. It could just go straight from like park all the way to the back without having to press the button on top. Now everything is as it should. It kind of feels like a gated shifter now. So this is park, reverse, neutral, overdrive, 1, 2, or 3, 2, and 1. That's all good now. Now all we have to do is throw everything back in the car and then install the bracketry on the transmission itself and then test it out. Okay, so you know how they say the last 10% takes the longest? That's basically what just happened here. We got our shifter all connected. It's really all straightforward. You're just replacing the factory stuff with the ShiftWorks stuff. What I couldn't do is I couldn't get this linkage here. I could not get this to work with the stuff there. So I will be just taking this off. Actually, let me do that right now. There we go. So yeah, we're gonna take this off. I think all that really does is like a park or a neutral safety switch. So if we just keep ours in the upright position, it should be fine. We probably won't have reverse lights, but no big deal, we can wire those in later. Yeah, we got our shifter all hooked up. I've been filling up my transmission. I have this stupid Chinese little dipstick thing. It takes forever to fill up. I've got quite a few quarts in there, maybe 3 quarts so far. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reconnect the battery, give the car a start, and see how much more fluid I need to put in the transmission. Okay, actually, before I start the car, I forgot to do one very important thing. And those of you that know about 700 R4s will know what I'm talking about. And that is the TV cable, the throttle valve cable. I had to run to the store really quickly. They sell in Edelbrock a ball stud, basically, or a stud for the TV cable slash TH350. I don't know, the TH350 one works for it. This is the cable that I had on the transmission. I'm pretty sure this is the stock 70 or 89 Camaro one. It seems to work just fine. It may need some adjustment. However, this cable has no adjustment built in, I don't think. What we're looking for is this thing to extend all the way out when we extend the gas pedal all the way out. Seems like it's gonna work. We're looking for it to shift right around from first to second at about 20 miles an hour. If it's shifting way too early, that means it's too loose. Late, like if it's shifting at 30 miles an hour, it means it's too tight. And so we'll adjust that accordingly. So now that this is on there, I'm safe to drive it if I need to. You want to make sure that it's at least hooked up. You want it adjusted correctly as well, but having it not connected is worse than having it misadjusted, honestly. I've heard of some people ruining their transmissions and like driving it around the block. So now I will start the car so we can finish topping off the transmission. I think we're gonna need probably about 2 more quarts. And then from there, oh, look at this, this fell off. Power brakes, we need those. Let's start the car, let's see what happens. I'm not gonna trust this dipstick that much. It is a cheap aftermarket one, but hopefully we see fluid on the dipstick once we start the car and run it for a second. Okay, I stopped it because I noticed a drip underneath. I'm pretty sure it's a stupid dipstick that's leaking. So I gotta let it cool off a little bit before I check that. Nope, that's 1,000,000% a leak, and I'm pretty sure it's coming right from the dipstick hole. It's either that or it's gonna be one of our cooler fittings. I'll check both of those. I found our leak. That's not supposed to be like that. So hopefully my adapter is good and I just messed up this AN fitting. That would be the best option here because I do not have another one of these adapters. So let's look at it. All right, I'm pretty sure I fixed the leak. Let's test it out. Give it a test drive. All right guys, so I've been driving this thing around for I'd say 30-40 miles. Took it on the highway, took it through traffic. So far everything seems to be fine. I finally got the fittings in to hook up to the stock radiator transcooler, so I'll be doing that at some point soon. But other than that, everything else seems to be working fine. The transmission shifts when it should. I think the TV cable could use a little bit of adjustment, but what I have on there right now shouldn't mess up the transmission at all. Everything seems to be shifting just fine. Other than that, I mean, it's been running fine. I'm gonna try taking it to work tomorrow and, you know, I'll let you guys know if it breaks or anything. Yeah, so far so good, and I think that's gonna conclude this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please go ahead and give me a like, subscribe. If you guys have any questions, you can hit me up on Instagram at Jovani Dante, Facebook, facebook.com/Jovani Dante Griego. And yeah, that's it for me guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.